everyone. My name is GERMOCEN-GONZALEZ, and today I'll be talking about the article on the use of meta-writing to learn grammar and mechanics by Douglas James Joyce. I'll give a little bit of background on Joyce. He's a professor. He teaches English composition and literature at McCook Community College in Nebraska. So, first off, we want to define what is meta writing essentially. So, meta writing is defined as simple as writing about writing. As a means of dealing with basic grammar and mechanic problems in his college level composition courses, the author Joyce came up with this tool. Meta writing can help students diminish errors in their writing through writing itself. So they're essentially using writing to learn, while assisting students with grammar and mechanics. Um, what the author establishes as a goal is to decrease students' writing errors. They're using writing to learn about specific grammatical or mechanical topics, while using writing's resources process as well. So they have to really investigate some information on what they'll be writing about. How do we use meta writing in the classroom? So we established that meta writing is writing about writing, but we just don't want the students to write about just anything. We want to identify a specific error that occurs frequently in the student writing. Once we select that error, the student will proceed to write a one-page essay on the error. This essay is called the write-up assignment. That's how Joyce defines it, which will consist in the student comparing and contrasting resources that establish conventional use for the grammatical or mechanical topic they will be writing on. The student will have to provide one correct and incorrect example of the usage and how and why it works the way it does, and if they agree or disagree. Additional to that, in the write-up assignments, Joyce provided a sample of 3 common errors found in his students' writing. The first error he found in his students' writing was the misuse of the apostrophe and possessives and contractions specifically. In this journal entry and their essay, the student that had this topic assigned understood the function of apostrophe. They provided various examples for its usage, one being the plurals, but they stressed more on the possessive and the contraction, using a really good example of its. So it's as and it's as apostrophe, or it is. So they made a really clear distinction between these two, and the student did not make the same error again. Although they did not uh, specify the read or the conventional usage of apostrophe. Second to that, Joyce identified the comma spice as a second major error in students' writing. In this student's journal entry that they wrote on the comma splice, the student found that typically the comma splice it is misused in a place of a semicolon. However, the student argued that this comma splice can be useful in writing, that although it's not grammatically correct and it's a sin for academic writers and editors, and it's not used in newspapers, academic essays, or any of that is deemed unacceptable, it can still be useful. So in this sense, the student that wrote this journal entry really demonstrated that they grasped the complexity of the convention and provided good examples of differences between usage, and if they agreed or disagreed, they made very clear that they disagreed on um, the comments by that even is non-standard a grammatical function, it can still be useful for writers. Finally, the third and last error that it was problematic in students writing, according to Joyce, is the passive and active voice. So for this journal entry, the student who wrote it actually put it in a passive voice, and it does not this even though it was a better way to do the journal entry for the write-up assignment, did not help the student at all. So Joyce actually found two things. One, that increases among students who write of this style error um, happens to all students that have written on the passive and active. So it wasn't only to this student, according to him. And secondly, that professors encourage students to write in active voices, but the sources that they're reading are written in passive voices. So he says that in that sense, it's kind of a contradiction, and it may have to do, and it may have influence on this particular error. To wrap up the segment on the write-up assignment, I want to name the major benefits I would identify for it. First off, the first being that this assignment helps students, for the most part, decrease specific errors in the writing by allowing students to intellectualize on grammatical and mechanical topics. First off, they have to read three separate sources, right? They have to investigate, really gather up information, and not only just have that information stored up, but they really have to analyze and put in practice critical thinking by comparing contrasting readings, right? They're not going to find essentially the same information and just copy and paste it. They really have to reflect on what they found, and they demonstrate understanding by providing examples, right? Both incorrect and correct usage on it. By doing all of this, the writer, right, the write-up assignment is essentially helping the writer notice errors in their own writing, right? So it's teaching by doing rather than the teacher directing or just marking up papers on what they're doing wrong and they're seeing the same errors over and over again. The teacher is putting the student in a position where they can really dictate their learning and say, okay, now that I know this information, what do I want to do with it? What can I do with it? How can I better my writing? Once they don't worry about those minor mistakes and errors, and they have more freedom and confidence in themselves, because as a writer, worrying about your grammar against sounding proper, it can really restrain you from your creative flow and the content of the writing itself. So overall, the write-up assignment is an effective tool for students to practice grammatical and mechanical functions, and it saves time in the classroom. Even one of Joy's students expressed the same feeling in one of their journal entries, and I quote, they said this about the write-up assignments. They were a good way to learn about something without wasting so much time on an actual lesson. So we have to also recognize that in the classroom, students and professors have restraints, and there's no time to stop to discuss the basics. Sometimes there's no time. There's only an hour, 50 minutes for a class. Also, there's a lot of content and material that the professor has to cover. So for that instance, the write-up assignment is really handy. So it is really handy, the write-up assignment as a way of assessment and as well as a tool to help students, scaffold that writing process for them and really help them gain that confidence. In summary, to end the discussion on the article, I would like to state that the two main benefits to use of meta writing I identified as first, significantly reducing specific errors in students' subsequent writing. And second, the write-up assignment in itself. It increases the use of writing resources such as style guides and handbooks by having to really dig up that information and make an investigation essentially on that specific grammatical mechanical topic. The student really has to engage in analytical critical thinking and reading as well, right? Because we kind of always associate the writing with reading. As well, the meta writing has been useful in Joyce College composition courses. So this is to stress that he does not state that this specific tool or strategy of the meta writing, it can be useful in post-secondary level. However, he does encourage further examination and research on the topic. Finally, on Joyce's words, I would like to say that he stressed the idea that writing for learning was the most valuable tool of the 20th century, and that meta writing could be essentially the most valuable tool of the 21st century. As my final words, I would like to say thank you for all of you two viewers that are watching my presentation right now. And that if you have any doubts or questions, I would gladly answer any of them. So any feedback is welcome. And once again, thank you for watching my presentation.